all-new 316 brake horsepower Honda Civic Type R, the fastest, largest and most powerful version of Honda's most famous hot hatch. It's already reclaimed its crown as the fastest front-wheel drive production car to lap the Nürburgring, and Honda says it has been engineered specifically to deliver the most rewarding drive in the hot hatch segment. I think we'll be the judge of that. So, despite smashing that Nürburgring lap record, it's quite a surprise then that the first thing you notice from behind the wheel of the new Type R is just how comfortable it is, how sort of normal it feels, which is a huge change because if you remember the previous model, that was incredibly firm and quite an uncomfortable car to do the day-to-day stuff. Now, when you bear in mind the performance this new model is capable of, Honda claims a 160 mile per hour top speed. The quality of the ride is really quite impressive. Now, there are three reasons as to how this new generation of Type R has adopted this new level of maturity, if you like. Now, the first is the adoption of a new platform, which it shares with the standard hatchback, which is it's lighter and stiffer than it was before. The second change is a new sophisticated rear suspension setup. So the old torsion beam system has been replaced with a multi-link setup at the rear. And the third change, and one of the biggest changes, is the addition of adaptive dampers for the very first time. The dampers come as standard and feature comfort, sport and R+ modes. At low speed and in comfort mode, the Type R is much softer than before, while the overall ride quality is far more cushioned and supple, and that's even on standard 20-inch alloy wheels. But the question is, have these newfound levels of comfort came at the expense of excitement? So other changes for the new Type R that are worth mentioning include the engine, which is the same 2-litre turbocharged unit as the old car, but Honda has tweaked it slightly to produce an extra 10 brake horsepower, which ups that to 316 brake horsepower. The brakes, they are the same system as before, the same Brembo system, but the front discs have been increased slightly in size. And the gearbox, again, it's the same 6-speed manual box as before, but the ratios in that have been shortened slightly to boost acceleration from lower speeds. Now, one of my personal favourite parts of the old Type R were the seats, which were great. They were the deep bucket seats, but they were comfortable but supportive at the same time, and that is exactly the case with this new version. They really are some of the best seats you can get in a hot hatch, and they come as standard, which is brilliant. Now, to get this car out of its softer side, which it's adapted, which makes it easy to use for the day-to-day stuff, to sort of really change that, you have to toggle through the new driving modes with the adaptive dampers. So there is a comfort, there's a sport, and there is an R+ mode, and you do that up through sport, up into R+, and it just takes on this more aggressive character which the Type R is famous for. A mechanical limited slip front differential and wider front track means the Type R serves up huge amounts of grip through bends. You can feel the front end biting into the tarmac through the steering. The amount of traction the Type R generates feels almost unbreakable. So the engine has been tweaked to produce a little bit more horsepower, but you can probably hear it's still not the most tuneful engine. It's still quite loud, but it's still absolutely rapid. Now, another thing you'll immediately notice behind the wheel is the turbo lag has been reduced massively. In the old car, you had to get up to about 3,500 RPM before the engine really started to come alive, and the revs would spike massively. Now, in this car, it's a lot more responsive. The most of the power is produced from around 2,500 RPM. So what that means is it just feels a lot more responsive, a lot smoother with the way the power is delivered. You don't get that spiky, frantic power delivery from the old car, but this feels equally as fast. And the thing that hasn't changed in this new Type R is the gearbox, which is just, it is absolutely fantastic. It has to be one of the best manual gearboxes out there, regardless of price point. It's short, it's weighty, it's precise, and what you might also be able to hear is a new automatic rev matching function, which Honda has fitted to the car. So what that does, it will help smooth changes at high speed when you're going down through the ratios, and even at lower speeds when you're around town. It just aids refinement to make this car just more usable day to day. Now, you can turn the system off if you feel like you want to, but we've been driving this car for 4 or 5 hours now. We've done a few hundred miles and we felt no reason at all to turn it off. It is a really well integrated system. And when it comes to simply being a hatchback, the Type R scores well too. There's a new digital instrument cluster, quality has taken a leap forward with better material fit and finish, while the dash features a much slicker looking infotainment system, although the graphics still look a little low rent. It's enormously practical too, with a 420 litre boot, space for 2 adults in the rear, and a supple ride, which means using it every day is an entirely conceivable prospect. That's not something you could say of the old model. Now, you only have to spend a day with the new Civic Type R to work out it is a huge step on over the previous model. Now, the looks, understandably, won't be to everybody's tastes, but you cannot ignore how much more usable and more rounded this new car is. Perhaps